I remember when you were born, my lady. You were named for my Aunt Lyanna. It was said she was a great beauty. I'm sure you will be too.
I doubt it. My mother wasn't a great beauty or any other kind of beauty. She was a great warrior, though. She died fighting for your brother Rob.
Hey guys, Pete here. I had some time today, so I finally got a chance to fix the sound for my Lyanna Mormont Game of Thrones history video. I got a lot of helpful, constructive criticism that the sound was no good in my first release of this, and honestly I'm not that surprised because I didn't really know what I was doing. But I took all the suggestions and applied them to my newer videos, and now I'm going to do this reboot of the Lyanna video. If you haven't seen the GOT election campaign that they're running on HBO's website, they actually made Lyanna Jon Snow's running mate. We met Lyanna Mormont in Season 6 of Game of Thrones. We had already heard mention of her at that point, but we'll get to that later. She is the head of House Mormont from Bear Island, and this video will go into how she ended up in that place.
What you have to understand, my lady, is that...
I understand that I'm responsible for Bear Island and all who live here. So why should I sacrifice one more Mormont life for someone else's war?
We first heard of Lyanna Mormont when Stannis was at Castle Black trying to rally houses behind him in the War of the Five Kings. He sent out ravens, and we see this note that House Mormont sent back, which says, "Bear Island knows no king but the king in the north, whose name is Stark." Stannis goes on to show this message to Jon, and we learn from him that Lyanna is like a 10-year-old. That makes her interesting right from the very start, and it might make you wonder, at least it did me, how she ended up as the head of this northern family. To understand that, we need to take a look at her family history and the family tree. Before we get into it, just keep in mind that things are different in the books and the show when it comes to the Mormont family and its characters. We know a few of them pretty well from the show. We know Jorah, who plays a big part in Daenerys' storyline, and his father Jorah, who was Lord Commander of the Night's Watch when Jon Snow first goes to the Wall. On this map of the north, we see Bear Island is right here, in the Bay of Ice, north of Deepwood Motte. Winterfell is down here, so you can see that they aren't very far away from each other. The Wall is up here, so you can see that they're nearby, and of course the Starks have been the ruling house in the north throughout most of history, but there's also an interesting bit of lore related to Bear Island. Legend has it that a past king of the north, Roderick Stark, won Bear Island in a wrestling match against an Ironborn guy who was holding it. After his victory, Roderick gave the island to House Mormont. Since House Mormont isn't a major house in Westeros, we don't have a detailed history about them in the World of Ice and Fire book, but we do get a lot of anecdotal stories about different members of the family. We have seen Lyanna's mother, Lady Mormont, in the show already, though. She traveled to fight beside Robb Stark in the war, and we get to see her in this clip where Robb is named King of the North. She stands out in this crowd, so I don't think you'll have any trouble figuring out which one she is.
What do they know of the war? Or the Wolfswood? And their gods are wrong.
We'll talk about Mage more in a minute because she's a super interesting character, but right now let's look through the complete Mormont family tree based on what we know. I will start out with the characters we know best in the show, and then go all the way down the line to Lyanna. This chart shows all the Mormonts we know about. Jorah Mormont is an important character you might have forgot about since he died off quite a while ago in the show Game of Thrones. We don't know anything about Jorah's wife, but we do know he has one son. As mentioned, Jorah was the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch when Jon first arrived at the Wall. Even though Jon distinguished himself as one of the most skilled fighters in his group of recruits, Jorah decided to post him with the stewards. Jon was definitely pissed off about this, but we find out later that Jorah has planned to make him his personal steward so that he can groom him for command. Jorah is Lyanna's uncle, and before taking the Black, he was the head of House Mormont. When his son Jorah came of age, Jorah decided to abdicate his seat so that his son could become the Lord of Bear Island. He went to the Wall and joined the Watch, where he quickly rose through the ranks to become the 997th Lord Commander. Jorah Mormont is a character we all know, as he has been in every single season of Game of Thrones. Jorah in the books and the show is a character who seems really honorable at times, but at best has made some poor decisions in his lifetime. Jorah married his second wife, Lynesse Hightower, after winning the tourney at Lannisport, while he was wearing her favor. After crowning her the Queen of Love and Beauty, Jorah asked her father for permission to marry her. Even though she could have married into a much more prominent family, her father said yes. Their marriage turned out to be the beginning of the end for Jorah, though, since his new bride was accustomed to a higher lifestyle coming from one of the wealthiest families in the Reach. Jorah ended up getting himself into financial trouble trying to keep his bride happy at Bear Island, and eventually got caught selling some poachers he captured into slavery. Slave trading is a crime punishable by death, and Jorah decided to flee rather than facing justice from House Stark. He left his ancestral family Valyrian steel blade Longclaw behind because of his dishonor. Jorah reclaimed the blade and brought it to the wall with him, but never liked to look at it since it reminded him of the shame that Jorah had brought on their family. After Jon saves his life, he has Longclaw refashioned with a wolf's head pommel and gives it to Jon, who still wields it now. So we saw Mage in the clip before, and when Jorah fled, she became the head of House Mormont. In the books, we learn a lot about Mage and her daughters, and for show watchers, this is where things get pretty interesting. Mage is known as the She-Bear. She's a large, stocky woman, and as we found out from the Lyanna clip, she is a warrior. We actually know that all Mormont women grow up to be warriors, because it's said that they learn to fight at an early age to defend themselves against invading Iron Men and wildling. Mage Mormont has 5 daughters whose father is unknown. This is most likely because her mate wasn't a lord or a highborn person, and in that case she would keep her own family name. I had a lot of questions about this in the comments of the original video, so I address it in more detail in the Lyanna Q&A video I made, which you should check out after you watch this. Book Mage and Show Mage have different storylines. When Lyanna meets with Sansa and Jon, she mentions that her mother died fighting for their brother Robb. In the books, we aren't 100% sure where she is, but there is no indication that she died. Anyways, Mage left Bear Island when Robb called his banners in the War of the Five Kings and traveled south to fight. In the books, both Mage and her oldest daughter were on their way to attend the Red Wedding, but Mage took off on a different mission and didn't go. Unfortunately, Lady Mormont was acting as one of Robb's Kingsguard and was killed along with him at the wedding itself. We don't know a whole lot about Lady, except that it's said that she was the most elegant of Mage's daughters. Lady was 6 feet tall, and accounts say she was comfortable dressing like a warrior just like her other sisters, but was also at ease dressing like a lady. We know she died from an axe to the belly at the Twins as a member of Robb's Kingsguard, but we don't have many other references about her to go off of. Mage's second daughter, Alysanne, on the other hand, is a character we know quite a bit about from the books. She ends up marching towards Winterfell with Stannis' army, and he has her watch over his prisoner, Asha Greyjoy, who we know as Yara Greyjoy in the show. She tells Yara she has 2 children, a daughter and a son, and again we don't know anything about the father. One of the most interesting things here is Alysanne tells her that the father is a bear. In fact, she says that all the Mormont women are skin changers, and they can all turn into bears, basically. That means they can go out and mate with bears if they want to. This story, and the fact that Mage is named the She-Bear, had a lot of people asking about whether the Tormund Giantsbane theory was real. It's a story he tells Jon about sleeping with a bear. There's 2 different theories. One involves Mage and one involves Alysanne, but they both boil down to him sleeping with one of them and being a father to one of their children. I broke this theory down a lot more in my Lyanna Q&A, so I'm not going to go into it again here. Alysanne is still alive in the books, but the story is completely different since Stannis is also still alive in the books as well. I don't think she'll be involved with the show at this point at all, so I think we can rule her out as, coming home and bumping Lyanna out as the head of the house. There are 2 more sisters in the books, Lyra and Jor-El, who Alysanne mentions to Yara that they're with her mother. We don't have any other information about them, which also means I don't think we'll ever meet them in the show, and I don't know where they're at in the book, so I can't say. That brings us to the little bear, Lyanna. As far as the family tree goes, she's way at the bottom. She is a daughter on the second side, as in her mother would have never been the head of House Mormont if her brother's son hadn't fled, or if Jorah would have had some children of his own. Since her mother and all her older sisters went south, she was left in charge. It's similar to how Bran was left behind in Winterfell, and we see that with the aid of their maesters, they can handle the family's affairs. Now Lyanna Mormont is the head of the house, and as we've seen in the show, she doesn't mince words.
Your son was butchered at the Red Wedding, Lord Manderley, but you refused the call. You swore allegiance to House Stark, Lord Glover. But in their hour of greatest need, you refused the call. And you, Lord Kerwin, your father was skinned alive by Ramsay Bolton. Still, you refused the call.
But House Mormont remembers. The North remembers.
We know no king but the king in the north whose name is Stark. I don't care if he's a bastard. Ned Stark's blood runs through his veins. He's my king, from this day until his last day.
So that is everything we know about the little bear and how she got to where she's at. I made the first video before she put Jon up as the King of the North, and now it seems like the show could probably use her a lot more in the last 2 seasons. Obviously she's a fun character and the actor is great, but I think one of the things that makes her extra awesome is that at her age she's in a position to act in a very straightforward and honorable way. Kids in some ways live in a world outside the influence of politics, and even though they can be extreme in their idealistic view of things, it seems like that could be actually a good influence on the heads of the other northern families. I don't know what the future holds for Lyanna, but I think it's a good sign that the show's creators have made her Jon's running mate in the campaign promotion on their site. That said, I don't think she'll be married to Jon Snow in the show, primarily because of her age. While it's pretty normal for women to get married very young in Westeros, the show already made a conscious decision to make the characters older than they were in the books. Like, for example, Daenerys is only about 13 when she's married off to Khal Drogo, and they had to change that to go along with our modern cultural norms since she ends up getting pregnant with his child. So let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure to watch my Lyanna Q&A video for more about the Tormund theory and all the other questions that people ask about Lyanna and the Mormont family. Thanks again for the feedback on the sound. I hope this one came out a lot better. Please like the video if you found it interesting, and subscribe to my channel for more Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire videos. I have a bunch planned that I'm going to be putting out this month, and I hope that you'll come and check them out. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.